The struggle of a 26-year-old is something that I have been grappling with now for the last year here in my life. I'm about to turn 27, and some of the things I've had to kind of ponder are like, why am I here? What am I doing with the life that I have? Um, and where am I going? So the struggles that I have encountered over the last year have been some of the most challenging and difficult times of my life. Um, Beginning of last year was probably the most stressful time period I have ever lived through. When the doctor calls and gives you some news that is not it isn't something you never thought you'd hear at a young age, and it causes you to ponder um, what's life going to look like after such an event, and um, and that's something I had to grapple with because I didn't know what would my life be like in a year from now, or this is last year, but what would like my life look like now than it did last year. Would I be alive? Would I be maimed, missing limbs? And luckily, um, that it wasn't as bad as it initially was thought to have been, and thankfully everything kind of sorted itself out. Um, Now, granted, it was definitely a hard process to swallow and go through, but it left me wondering, what am I doing with my life? So, I'm being still 26, like I said, and I was forced to, after everything kind of had settled down and the storm had seemed to have passed. I was left with, what now? Where am I going now? Um, because I think when people go through a very traumatic situation where they're forced to meet their morality and realizing at a young age that life is very finite and fragile and everything can be taken away from you, um, it makes you appreciate things in a way that you've never appreciated before. Like just waking up, realizing that you are fine and that you get to do things that you thought were a burden, which aren't really necessarily a burden. But it got me thinking, like I said, where do I go from here? Um, and that got me to where I'm at now, where I'm putting together the future for myself and future family, hopefully, that I can live a comfortable life and enjoy the things that I've worked for and achieved and so not and whatnot. So the struggle of a 26-year-old today in 2026. Um, I imagine a lot of you are probably in the same boat as me, where you're just kind of like floating, wondering where I'm going, what direction do I need to be going in, and you really don't know. Um, and I was there for a long time. I thought I had a career early in my early 20s, where I thought I had it set up, and I was like, man, this is gonna be good. I'm gonna be good for 40 years. I'm gonna work at this company. It was a very good company, but I eventually came to the conclusion I want more out of life than just doing this. I was guaranteed, if I would have done everything I was supposed to, I would have been a guaranteed millionaire when I'm 60. If I'm lucky to live to 60. You realize some things when you go through, like the thing I went through last year, you realize, well, if I'm lucky enough to live that long. But I would have had a comfortable working life. if I would have stayed there. But I realized I wanted more. Like most of you, you want more out of just 9 to 5 or the grind. You want more than what life is currently giving you. And through those years, I have gone through industry and industry, one selling roofs and selling insurance, and realizing those are the most miserable things I've ever done. But it takes, getting to that point and working through it, realize, okay, this sucks. And now I'm currently, working a job that's not necessarily bad, but it's a stepping stone right now to hopefully get to a career that I, enjoy enough to, I can make a career out of. But that comes with searching for meaning. And meaning to me is looking for fulfillment, something I can look back on and say I'm proud of myself for doing that. I'm proud of myself and all the effort and sorrows and headaches I went through, and it was worth it. And I've struggled to find that, like many of you have probably struggled, because you don't really necessarily know which direction you're going in, like me. One of the things I envy people about who found their careers early on, like doctors, for example, they just knew, or a teacher, they just knew, like, oh man, I knew in like 5th grade I wanted to be a doctor or a teacher or whatever. I'm like, how in the world did you know that? Like, how did you know you wanted to be in this career field at such a young age? And some people just have that, and I unfortunately didn't have that. I do know for certain if I could have done anything, I would have been a race car driver. But unfortunately, I came from a middle class background, and in order to have, a race, in order to fund stuff like that, for those of you know, it takes an arm and a leg. But most people who have found their careers early, I was like, how did you do that? They're like, oh, I always wanted to do it. They never questioned it. They just went straight through it. They just went straight to that and never looked back. And I was like, man, how? So, but for some of us, like me, finding that meaning in life takes a little bit more time. And it can be very frustrating, because when you think you found something, you realize, oh man, this just sucks. And where do I begin to search? Where do I begin to go? Where do I begin to, who do I ask? Where do I go? And that starts with just making a plan. Through this last year, I realized that, just getting off go is something. And what I mean by that means like, maybe jotting down ideas or going on a walk, if you're, fitness goal or something, just doing rather than thinking, I'm a very deep thinker when it comes to like my next steps, and it's been the bane of my existence, because I just sit there. I'm like, I'll think until I just think rather than doing, and it causes procrastination because I'm trying to think of every possible avenue, and it's been, like I said, the bane of my existence. Which is not necessarily a bad thing that I think so much, but just getting off go has been really hard for me. And so what I've come up with, just don't have to have everything figured out. And just getting off go is what I've been trying to do. So right now, I'm working this job. Like I said, it's a stepping stone, and I'm looking for other careers. Like right now, I'm looking at aviation mechanics or cybersecurity, whatever, but I haven't figured out which one do I want to go to. But I'm just going to, figure it out. Right now I'm enrolled into the avionics program here in my local community college, and we'll see. And sometimes I've thought about doing, some of the cybersecurity stuff, and I don't know. I've been told that it's kind of rough on people. From people who work in the industry, it's rough mentally, and they work long hours supposedly. But if you guys have a comment on that, just let me know. So how do you, overcome these struggles to find meaning. And one is just getting off go, or two, what has helped me is just having an action plan that I can at least take actionable steps, no matter how big they are. Meaning if I have like the aviation thing, I thought about aviation, so I said, I'm just going to go sign up, and then that's been about a year now. There's a wait period, but I was going to sign up, see if I like it. And that's what I mean, just overcoming, starting, getting off go, and putting things together, regardless if it's, cobbled together or not. Some things I don't really think having a foolproof plan anymore is really beneficial, because so many things are subject to change. And if we sit there and dwell for every possible avenue of what can go right or go wrong, there's so many inherent risks that we can't see or will never be able to see, or, whatever. And this is easier to go. And overcoming starts with, okay, I have a plan. I'm going to write a plan down. Writing it down has been the best thing for me, because it shows that I actually have a plan. And having a plan is, a lot more than thinking you have a plan. And that has been my biggest thing to overcome, just getting off go and finding the meaning that I'm searching for. And that is where I'm at now, is on the path. And this path that I am currently on is, like I said earlier, a path that hopefully gets me to where I can spend as much time with my family as I possibly can. I can work and do things when I want at a young age. I don't want to wait till 60 to do that, because, like I said, we might not even live that long, because that stuff is not guaranteed. So getting on this path, regardless of what it looks like, has been the biggest help. And just start walking in a path that you think might, because, there's so many forks in the road that you can go left or right, but you won't know what those forks look like if you don't start on this path that should be on. And as a 26-year-old, struggling to find, meaning and that path, not sure where I was going with there, but just being on that path is a path, regardless of what it regardless of what it looks like for you, is definitely better, more beneficial than sitting and waiting to start your journey, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Like what Apollo Creed says to Rocky, there is no tomorrow, and that's true. There is no tomorrow, and so just beginning that path that you think you should be on, just go ahead and start it. Don't even tell anybody about it. Just start and see where you go. Because I think you'd be surprised at the results that come quicker than you thought they would. Yeah. So make a plan and start executing. Get on the path, start executing the path. Start walking down, or start jotting down thoughts, becoming a steward of your life. Do an audit of your life and see where you're at, like I have done, and just be prepared, for life to still struggle a little bit, because I'm struggling in terms of finding this path. But hopefully one day I look back and realize when I started, or when I look back on the time I started, I can just smile and be like, I'm glad I'd started, because thinking through it and just hoping to start isn't enough. You have to start. So execute. Just make a path and execute on what you told yourself you're going to be doing, and hold yourself accountable. I think that's a big problem with people, is when you say it, mean it, and meaning, having that meaning for yourself, that yes, what I put my mind to and what I say about myself I'm actually going to do, has also been a really big help for me. So yeah, just leave you guys, let me know what you guys are at in this journey that you're on, and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Out.